Much. Now we stay in the region. Israeli authorities are reviewing an incident in Jenin in the occupied West Bank in which IDF soldiers shot 2 people following a surrender procedure. The Palestinian Authority confirmed their deaths, with the West Bank's General Authority for Civil Affairs identifying the men as 26-year-old Al-Muntasir Mahmoud Qassem Abdullah and 37-year-old Yusuf Ali Yusuf Asasa. Palestine has also condemned the deadly shooting as a full-fledged war crime and a flagrant violation of all international laws, conventions and norms, and humanitarian values. Meanwhile, Israel's far-right security minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has given his full backing to the officers involved, adding that terrorists must die. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Rohan Gunaratne. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Singapore. Now, Professor, thank you for joining us again. We don't know what exactly was the cause of these 2 Palestinians walking towards Israeli soldiers, but how should international law be applied and enforced in situations where lethal force is used after reported surrender, in this case particularly towards Israel and the Gazans who were shot?
Asuma, it's very good to see you.
Thank you.
Let me share with you that in the West Bank, there has been escalation in tensions. It's largely driven by the situation in Gaza, so it has spilled over to the West Bank. And there has been more incidents in the West Bank most recently, but these are very recent developments. We have seen some of the Hamas ideology has also come to the West Bank. But to specifically respond to your question, what we are seeing is that it was a tragic death because these 2 individuals wanted to surrender to the Israelis. They didn't want a confrontation. Of course, there was a shooting. So what we have seen most recently is that the Israeli troops have become more suspicious of such activities, because in the past there has been some incidents where people wanted to surrender and then of course they opened fire. So I believe that this is a very tragic incident, and this incident will certainly be investigated because there's a lot of international focus and spotlight on this issue. The Israelis are fighting a very difficult war, a very difficult battle after the October 2023 attacks, where 1,200 Israelis and foreign nationals were killed and another 251 were kidnapped by Hamas and its allied groups. But at the same time, it is so important for Israel to be more restrained when it deals with the civilian population, because if they lose support from the Palestinian people, there will be more attacks and there will be more violence and there will be more extremism.
And is there any political implications of this opposing narratives? You know, the Palestinian Authority calling the incident a war crime, while Israeli minister like Ben-Gvir defended the shooters.
The Palestinian Authority itself is not accepted by Israel as a credible partner. In fact, there are many efforts by the international community to bring the Palestinian Authority as the new governing body of Gaza. Israel doesn't accept it because the Palestinian Authority itself does not recognize Israel as a state. So what we are seeing is that there is currently a debate between these powers, the PA and the Israeli Authority. Certainly both their claims will be evaluated by international bodies, and they may very well come to a conclusion as to what happened. But what is key and what is central is, as there is now a shift towards phase 2 in Gaza, and there is interest for the Palestinian Authority also to play a role, although Israel is opposed to it, that such conflicts do not impact on the greater plans to build stability and security both of Gaza and of the West Bank.
Yes, with that, I would like to thank Professor Gunaratna for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to Europe, Germany, Italy, France, and the United Kingdom urge Israel to follow international law and protect Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. In a joint statement, the four foreign ministers have condemned the sharp rise in settler violence and called on Israel to take immediate steps to restore stability, hold perpetrators accountable, and safeguard civilians. The ministers warn against annexation and settlement expansion, highlighting the approval of the E1 project and thousands of new settlement units this year as an unprecedented escalation that must be reversed. They've also criticized Israel's withholding of Palestinian tax revenues and demand their release, emphasizing the need to support public services and prevent further economic decline. Reaffirming their commitment to a two-state solution, the ministers have stressed that it remains the only path to a just and lasting peace. They urge all parties to exercise restraint and take concrete measures to de-escalate tensions in the region. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back Professor Rohan Gunaratna. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Singapore. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Now, Professor, do you think that these calls, or not just from these European nations, but also from regions across the world, have been continually calling for a two-state solution? But do you think this is realistically feasible at this time?
Two-state solution would have been acceptable before October 2023 attacks. There were many Israelis who were considering it. There was a huge community in Israel that wanted a two-state solution. But after October 2023 attacks, no sensible Israeli will want and will agree to a two-state solution, because if there is a build-up of anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish sentiments, either in West Bank or in Gaza, there will be no security for Israel. So Israel does not want to give a two-state solution. But it is an idealistic view and a vision of a very small number of Israelis and Jews. And of course, it is a concept that is being promoted by many Europeans and European governments, the Canadians, the Australians, New Zealanders. They want a two-state solution. But personally, I believe that it's a question of time that there will be a two-state solution, but not at the moment. Until the threat in Gaza is dismantled and Hamas is eliminated, there will be no two-state solution. Who wants to have next to its own land a terrorist group that has killed 1,200 people, taken 250 people as hostages, and they still praise it, they still love it. In fact, they call it the Al-Aqsa flood, and there's no regret, no remorse on the part of either the Palestinians or of Hamas that they have made a fatal mistake. The day they accept this is a horrible attack, this is a massacre, and this should not have happened, that is the day the two-state solution is created. So this will need a lot of understanding, a lot of dialogue between the Israelis and the Palestinians. It's too premature for anyone to ask for a two-state solution at this point, because the Israelis are not ready for it.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Professor Rohan Gunaratna for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now we move on to Syria. Syria has reported that 9 people were killed by Israeli strikes in the southern village of Beit Jin amid a clash between the locals and IDF troops. Meanwhile, IDF has said that 6 IDF troops were wounded, including 3 in serious condition after coming under fire during an arrest operation in southern Syria. The IDF also said that the soldiers of the 55th Reserve Paratroopers Brigade set out to detain members of the Al-Jama'a al-Islamiyya terror organization following an intelligence information collected in recent weeks, indicating that they were operating in the Syrian village of Beit Jin and worked to advance attacks on Israel. Now we move on to Turkey. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has praised Pope Leo's position on the Palestinian issue following a meeting in Ankara. Erdogan has commended the Pope and his predecessor for their support of Palestine and called his first overseas visit as Catholic leader a hopeful step for humanity in these times of tension. Erdogan also highlighted the Pope's calls for peace and diplomacy over the Ukraine war, noting their significance. Turkey has been a strong critic of Israel's action in Gaza, and Erdogan has also expressed appreciation for the Pope's messages on family values. Let's listen into what the Turkish president has shared.
Kıymetli misafirimizin ziyareti bölgesel ve küresel olaylar bağlamında son derece kritik bir zamana tekabül ediyor. İnsanlığın yön arayışının hızlandığı, küresel düzeyde belirsizliklerin arttığı, Asya'dan Afrika'ya, Latin Amerika'dan Doğu Avrupa'ya gerilimlerin tırmandığı bir dönemde gerçekleşen ziyaretin tüm insanlık için hayırlara vesile olmasını ümit ve arzu ediyorum. Saygıdeğer misafirimiz ve seleflerinin özellikle Filistin meselesine yönelik dirayetli duruşlarını daima takdirle karşıladığımızın
And that's a wrap